All right, our next presentation, we're going to be going from an online training to a cool video game. So you can see the theme, right? All about the cool technology. It's going to feature Professor Jennifer Van Oss. She's an assistant professor and extension specialist here at UW-Madison. And with her will be Jordan Matthews, who is a partner in Rosy-Lane, Holsteins, and Watertown. They're going to be talking about a cool video game. I don't want to steal too much of their thunder, but it's called Mooving Cows, so that sounds pretty exciting. Please welcome Jennifer and Jordan.
Okay, thanks so much for having us today. So I figured we'd just open by having Jordan tell us a little bit about Rosy-Lane.
Sure. So I'm Jordan Matthews, a partner at Rosy-Lane Holsteins. We're a multi-family owned farm. Our home base is in Watertown, Wisconsin. There we milk about 850 cows, and then we do have our dry cows there, and we do a lot of our cropping there. And we just recently started a satellite facility in Paoli, Wisconsin, where we milk about 700 cows. So about 1,700 total animals, 30 full-time employees. I think that's a general overview. Can
you tell us a little bit about your employees, what languages they speak?
Sure. So out of the 30, I think we have today would be 23 are born outside of the U.S., Spanish speaking, and then a lot of different dialects, but we have representation from Mexico, Nicaragua, and Guatemala right now.
And I know, Jordan, you're fluent in Spanish, and that must be pretty helpful. How do you approach training your employees and setting expectations, communicating with them?
Yeah, so we have 3 people on our management team who are bilingual. We feel it's pretty important to speak in their language, not force people to speak our language. We've always made the joke, I speak English and Spanish, but if someone screams at me in Japanese or just speaks politely in Japanese, I still don't understand it. So there was a common theme in the dairy industry for a lot of years, like when you got mad at someone, you would just speak louder at them, and that didn't really accomplish much. So let's work to change and be a little smarter.
So I know that Rosy-Lane has partnered with a lot of research, both with my lab and elsewhere in UW-Madison, including right now. Today we're specifically talking about this project, Mooving Cows. So to give you a little context, I just want to share a video with you first. Okay, I got to get up.
Welcome to Mooving Cows. Practice moving cows around a dairy farm by using your body language. It's time for milking, so the cows need to be moved from the pasture and the barn and loaded into the milking parlor. Learn about cow behavior and practice cow handling skills to stay safe and keep the cows calm. Pass all 8 levels of the game to earn a certificate of completion. Mooving Cows is approved by the Farm Animal Care Program for continuing education on stockmanship. Play it in English y en Español. This educational game was designed by the University of Wisconsin-Madison, with help from people who work on real dairy farms in Wisconsin. The game is completely free, with no ads. Download Mooving Cows for Apple and Android mobile devices.
So what we want to talk about today is that last line in the video about how it was developed with the help of people who work on real dairy farms in Wisconsin. That was really a key part of it. So I want to just start from the beginning about how this idea came about. When I started here at UW-Madison in 2018 as an extension specialist in animal welfare, I talked with a lot of Wisconsin dairy farm owners and managers and others in the industry to ask them, what are your biggest challenges around animal care and animal welfare, and what can I do with my research and extension attention to try to solve these problems. And one of the most popular requests I got was to come to farms and do training on appropriate cow handling. And it's a really important topic, but it's not necessarily something that would be efficient for me to spend my time doing. So I wanted to try to find something more effective to multiply that knowledge. So before I talk about the process of developing the game, I want to ask Jordan, why do you think that appropriate cow handling is important?
So at Rosy-Lane, we take safety very important. We're dealing with animals that can be up to 2,000 pounds, and most of our team members are maybe 120 to 150 pounds. So if there's a bad interaction, it can go south very fast. Cows are unpredictable, and they win the fight usually. So it's really important that people understand how cows can move, and we can predict their behavior. We're not always right, but that's really important to us because injured people are not a fun thing to go home and think about.
So I think you highlighted something really important about worker safety and their comfort in their job. What about from the cow perspective? Why do you think that it's important for people to learn certain types of cow handling?
Yeah, from the cow's end, I mean, the less stress we can put on her on a daily, hourly, down to the minute basis, the more productive that animal is, the more productive she is, the better our lives are. So everything we do is try to take stress off that cow. And just simple examples, if you're screaming in a barn, that cow knows that, and she's going to get adrenaline rushes. She's not really excited. If we walk nice and calmly, she's a little more at peace, and that'll help her daily routine go a little bit more smooth.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the research has shown, because cows are a prey species, and so if you behave a certain way, it can cause a fear response, basically a fight or flight reaction. So it's better for their welfare and for their productivity if we learn appropriate handling practices. So we had a really in-depth conversation like this many years ago, where Jordan and Lloyd Holterman, another former partner, Rosy-Lane, had come and given me a lot of insights into what is it that you expect from your employees when it comes to cow handling. How do you train them? What could be a better way to train people, especially given language barriers and other limitations like time constraints on the farm. And so that's how the idea for Moving Cows was born. My father-in-law is a retired commercial airline pilot, and even though he was very experienced, when he was learning a new aircraft, he had to do the flight simulator, right, before they put him in charge of an entire airplane full of people. And so I had a similar idea. I'm really not much of a video gamer in my personal life. I couldn't have predicted this is where my work would have taken me. But when we got this idea, I ran it by Jordan and some other people, and I remember you got really excited, and we talked through what this could possibly look like. So the first step was I spent some of my faculty startup funds, and I was applying for more funding to try to make this dream a reality. We got some concept art, and so actually at the beginning of the lockdown, we went to Rosy-Lane, as well as Mystic Valley, another nearby farm, to try to show these video game developers from Filament Games. They're a company that specializes in educational video games, headquartered here in downtown Madison. And these programmers had never been on a farm, had never seen real cows. And we're trying to explain these concepts that are very physical and spatial, because when you're moving cows, it's kind of like a dance between you and the animal. And so to try to visualize this, we wanted to take them to a real Wisconsin farm to see what is actually happening in the day-to-day. And so then the next step was we were thankfully successful in using that concept art and these ideas to secure funding from UW-Madison through the Research Forward initiative, through the Office of the Vice Chancellor of Research and Graduate Education, that allowed us to start programming the game. And so we worked with Filament Games and we made a prototype, and that's where we went back to Rosy-Lane as well as other farms, and Jordan came to campus along with other dairy farm owners, professional bilingual trainers, and veterinarians to play this prototype and give us their input. And it was really critical to us that we didn't try to make this finished product and then hand it to them and say, ta-da, is this what you wanted? We wanted to make sure that we still had a lot of room to make changes and ensure that it was going to be relevant for our end users. So, Jordan, I'm wondering if you could reflect on that process where you participated in reviewing our prototype and your staff did as well.
Yeah, first, I know I was involved before many of our team members were, but it was interesting to me. Some of the training techniques we had used previously are more of watch a video, sign that you watch the video, we bring you out into the barn, do some interactions with cows, and we realized really quick, like, well, you might have been sleeping during that video. We need to try something different. And there was no feedback kind of session, and that's what was really interesting about this video game is you would see really quickly whether one of our team members would understand the concept. In the game, if they get kicked, it's not like the end of the world, right? It's just a video game and you get a negative score. In life, when you get kicked, that's really not that fun, and it's not good for anyone involved there. So I liked the fact that there was feedback, and again, you didn't just hand out a product. So a lot of, let's say, YouTube videos that we watched on cow stockmanship, you would watch it, and someone would put that out on the internet, and that was the product. I don't know that they went through a review session to say, is this actually what you wanted to see? And I appreciated that. I think everyone in that meeting appreciated it, and the product wasn't perfect either, too, so we gave you some good comments, and I think there was revisions. I remember one of the first things we saw was, the pasture, and I said, we don't have a pasture. We need to do something better than a pasture. That's not really relevant. We have a, freestall barn, and we have milking parlors. And right away, you're like, just hold on. We have a couple more levels that are coming, so be patient. And, we've heard that from multiple people. So we were excited about that you listened to our concerns, and once we saw the final product, I think a lot of those you could tell were taken into account.
Yeah, and so one thing I wanted to mention is in the video game, again, you can download it, it's free, there's no ads. There's credits, kind of like at the end of a movie, and Jordan is so humble. He just wanted it to say thank you to Rosy-Lane, Holsteins, and staff, but you can see it was really a team effort. There were a lot of other people who provided really valuable insights, so I welcome you to download it, check it out, look at the credits, because we really owe thanks to everybody who provided that input so that it wasn't just something I came up with, but really it was this collaborative effort. So, after we incorporated the feedback from Rosy-Lane and these other farms, we developed version 1.0 of Mooving Cows, and at that stage we decided we weren't ready to release it to the public because as part of this process, we really wanted to make sure that we could refine it and also get evidence that it works. So Jordan mentioned that sometimes there's these YouTube videos where I think the information is correct, but when we develop extension outreach materials, it's important to evaluate. Are people actually learning something? Are they getting value out of it? And so we decided to keep that internal and do some formal evaluation and research to see if people learn something from it. And so we actually went back out to a few other farms and we assessed people's knowledge change both before and after the game. And we also got a little bit of additional feedback on how we could further improve the game and make it take a little bit less time to complete because on a working dairy farm, it's not always feasible to set aside a long time for training. And so we wanted to make sure that it was something that would be feasible. And so then we got this award from the Dairy Innovation Hub, which enabled us to do two things, which was incorporate that additional feedback, refine the game, make it a bit more effective and efficient. And we also tested it with various student audiences, so undergraduates taking animal and dairy science courses, many of whom don't come from farms and don't have any animal experience, as well as youth in 4-H and veterinary students on a dairy skills rotation. And it allowed us to release it publicly. So I really want to thank the Dairy Innovation Hub for making it possible that the game is available now. I just want to brag a little bit. As of a couple weeks ago, I checked and there are over 14,000 downloads in more than 100 countries worldwide. It would be really exciting if we could make it available in more than just English and Spanish, but we really wanted to start there because our core audience is people who work on dairy farms in the US who have this expectation for annual continuing education on this topic. So I want to ask Jordan then, how are you and your staff using the game now that it's out?
So one of the things we right away wanted to use it, we said we liked it. A lot of our staff had tried it. They had asked us, when is this thing actually going to be available, that it's not only on the tablet that shows up to the farm. So once it was released, we had all staff go through downloading it, and let's see how far you can get. Let's see how much in the bulk tank you can get full of milk, and make sure we're not getting kicked. And then at the end, you get a certificate that it says your name and you completed it at in X amount of time or what have you. And that was really interesting. So anyone that had been on the farm. We have people that have been with us over 20 years working with animals. Didn't necessarily mean that they were experts, and we had people that had only been on farm for, let's say, 6 months, and they might have done better. So it was fun to just give them the tool. We were trying to do it over lunch breaks or team meetings and spend a little bit of time, but it gave them an interesting way to interact. I think most populations now know what a phone is. They know how to play on a phone. They're distracted by a phone, so let's give them a tool on their phone to train and do something worthwhile for the dairy. Now, when we have a new team member, we usually spend about an hour, hour and a half in the office doing paperwork, the kind of boring stuff of onboarding, but then we'll integrate this game into that and try to make sure that they're doing something fun, and that's just the step before we go out to see the cows. But it did create some competition, which was fun in the barn. People were talking about, how did you do in the game versus how did I do? And then people would have to play it again to try to beat their friend's score. And I think they didn't quite understand that they are learning something too, which was good. I don't know, we've never had a lot of injuries, so I don't know that it reduced injuries in the barn, which is okay. It certainly didn't set it the other way. But again, it got our team members excited about training, got our team members, you're talking about something other than, the football game last night and focused on the dairy. So we liked that, but we're trying to incorporate it on every new team member on the farm so that they have just something different than, the videos that we thought were average at best before. We think this is a superior tool.
Thanks, I love hearing that. And again, it was very important to us to make this freely available because our goal is to make a resource that's helpful to all farms, and we didn't want to try to profit off of this. We really just wanted something useful that would be out there to help the industry. So I'm thinking maybe we move to audience questions. Do you have any parting thoughts before then?
No, I think it's important that we as farmers continue to integrate with university, to be able to develop some of these things. I think there's great ideas coming from the university, but when we bounce back and forth, I think that's where we get a really unique and quality end product. So we're happy with how this turned out. I know there's a lot of checkpoints in between, but we want to continue those type of collaborations.
I appreciate that, and I'm really grateful for your partnership as well. All right, we're happy to take questions.
Let's say OSHA if they visit. A lot of times farms have limited resources for safety training. So is this something that you can use in that way? Or anyone has?
So yeah, on our farm, there's a standard form that every time we have a safety meeting, employee meeting, people sign in, objectives that we completed during that. This would be very similar. So once we've completed that, there is a certificate that we can print off. We'll put that in employee file, and I don't know that it necessarily passes for OSHA, but on our end, it's part of the farm program, which is Farmers Assuring Responsible Management, and that's key to us. That's kind of the check mark in the industry these days. As long as you pass that, then you're good to go. And I don't know that we've shut down farms if you didn't pass that, but a lot of milk purchasers are starting to really put that into their criteria. So that's how we use it.
And I'll just follow up on that. So that farm program, it's evolved over time, but now over 99%, almost 100% of farms in the U.S. participate through their processors or co-ops. It's our national quality assurance program for animal welfare in the U.S. And so there is this requirement that on an annual basis, anybody who works with cattle, whether they grew up on the farm or they're hired outside employees, they need to show annual continuing education on the topic because it is easy to drift into poorer habits. And so this is a way to reinforce those expectations. So the game is certified by the farm program to be continuing education for cow handling.
Yeah, I will just remark. Thank you so much for this analysis. And so my question is about the distribution of this game since it's super fun. And I was wondering, how did you distribute this game to the different farmers, and what kind of resources did you use, and what you plan to use, and
Thank you. So the question was about the distribution of the game. And so Filament Games, again, they specialize in educational video games, not entertainment games per se. And so they have expertise in helping with this kind of thing. So actually, we use the App Store at the School of Veterinary Medicine because they already have one. They have other applications. And Dr. Nigel Cook was one of the collaborators on this project. And so Filament Games helped us get the apps approved for both Apple and Google Play. In terms of the marketing around it, I will admit, I am not any kind of social media guru. I think that there's still further opportunity for promotion of the game, but we did work through the farm program and other industry partners to try to get the word out there, and it is a lot of word of mouth. So please download it, play it, see what you think, spread the word. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Jordan.
I mean, we heard about it from the source, so I'm probably not a good person to ask that question. We share that we use it, but I can't say that I've seen it anywhere unique online, so I don't know. Probably not a good answer.
From the beginning of this program to when you engage until you get the bulk tank full, what time span is it that somebody should be engaged in this app?
Yeah, I think it's 8 levels right now. And I think it kind of depends on, like, I just did it at home once with my wife, and I know how to get it done fast, and I could probably pass all 8 levels in 15 minutes. And she went very slow and methodical, and she got the highest score because there was no stress, and I was like ripping my eyes out watching her. I'm like, come on, this isn't practical, you gotta go faster. But I think 45 minutes for sure would get it done.
Yeah, and so that was one of the things we were targeting, is to make sure that it didn't drag on. So version 1.0, the first full version of the game that we kept private for research, we were collecting data on how long it took people to play. And the average then was about 40 minutes, but up to an hour or even more. And we felt that that was too long and maybe not realistic for on-farm training. And so we then made some changes for version 1.1, which is the version you can download now. We were targeting for it to be much quicker. So I think now the average is, it's under half an hour. That was our target. Some people do complete it as fast as 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, no longer than 40, unless you're really trying to go as slow as possible. Actually, my niece tested it for us, and every single time she pressed, "I speak gently to the cow," and I told her, you know, you don't have to do that, and she said, "It just feels nice."
Can you hear me? Okay. More than a question, this is like basically a feedback. I have used the program quite a bit and the farms that I visit on a daily basis, and it's a great tool, and has been a lot of set of eyes for me just to help and convince the people how they need to manage those cows. And as Jordan said, you know, sometimes it's just a video, so every year it's the same video, and it's kind of boring, right? And also you do a lot of hands-on training actually in the pens. But the way that the program was set up, even for me, I think differently now too. So I think that just wanted to give feedback, and I know there are producers in the room, so I really encourage everybody just to share that with the employees, and it's a great tool. I just wanted to give my feedback about it. So
thank you. I really, really appreciate that. It's always so nice to hear those stories. And one thing I wanted to mention, I see Monica Ruiz-Ramos, she's a PhD student in my lab. She's writing a dissertation chapter about the research that we did on this. And one thing we did ask the people who work on Wisconsin dairy farms who evaluate it for us, we asked, imagine a person with little to no cow handling experience. How useful do you think the game would be for them? And then we asked them, okay, now imagine somebody who already has a lot of cow handling experience. How useful would it be for them to practice? Because this is this annual continuing education expectation in the industry. And either way, the average was about a 4 out of 5. And that was really encouraging for us that this could potentially be something useful, and maybe even people who know what they're doing can pick up something new. So I love to hear that. Thank you so much.
My question sort of piggybacks off that, so I can't wait to make all 5 of our kids play this tonight. But do you see a lot of practical experience from the game to actually handling cows? Has it improved? Does it actually help? Can you take somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience, they play the game and they kind of know what they're doing? As a father, I find myself a lot of them be like, what are you doing? Like, does it help with that? I'm not the most patient person in the world.
Yeah. I think one thing important for us to always remember is, you know, I have 20 years experience working with animals. A lot of the people that we onboard have 0. Some have never seen a cow before. And so the expectation that they're ever going to be as good as us in an hour is kind of crazy. But I think maybe it didn't improve them on day one, but at least we can talk about a situation, let's say in the parlor, we have a double 12 milking parlor, and they're standing right in front of a cow, and they're like, the cows aren't loading very good. Like, remember in the video game, if you stood in front of them, she's going to walk backwards. And at least it might get the light bulb to click a little faster, because rarely do people get it on the first time, right? But maybe they'll get it on the third time instead of the fifth time. That's kind of how we look at it. But it's getting the basics in there, I think, a little sooner, and it's getting the brain thinking a little more than just watching a video where there's no interaction. That's how we see it.
And I think you are asking a key question. As a researcher, that would be the next step that I would like to do with our research. So we found evidence that it does improve people's knowledge of best practices in cow handling, but we would love to see that it does actually help them change their behavior and implement those best practices. So that would be the next thing we'd like to evaluate. The other thing I want to note is Jordan mentioned that one of the beautiful things about educational video games is that it's a safe place to learn from mistakes. So deliberately, we make people do things that you shouldn't do so that they learn those consequences. And it really frustrates perfectionists. They're like, you made me do this thing I didn't want to do. But that's part of this principle of educational games. And so the game allows them to practice these things that you really can't do. You can't see it in a video. You can't even see this on the farm necessarily, where we want them to kind of see the consequences of when things go wrong. So we think that that's potentially another advantage.
I suspect there's a significant amount of transference to other livestock species. Do you suspect that too? Do you maybe foresee other versions, or do you think it'll just transfer?
I think a little bit of both. Like you said, some of the concepts are similar, and actually a lot of these principles that we apply now to managing dairy cattle originated with beef cattle handling. And so I definitely think some of those concepts are similar, but we would love to have more specific resources to each species or sector or, housing system. And I guess what I'd have to say is I'd love to do it, show me the money, and I'll be there.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Fox, and he kind of stole my thunder. I was wondering if you guys had any interactions with other animals. So obviously you took this from the beef industry. Have you looked at pigs, sheep, and sheep are bad, but other large animals on the farm? And have you reached out to those groups to find funding to expand this? Instead of next level, more levels, you would actually go linear to more types of animals through this app. Thank you.
Thanks. I think, similar to the last point, I could foresee this being applied to a lot of different sectors. And so this was kind of a proof of concept because there had been no educational video game or simulator for any type of animal handling. And so we were really trying to establish, we think the technology is here. Is this something that can work where people learn something? And so, yes, I think that there's potential. We also actually have a lot of ideas for dairy handling where we could deal with more complex scenarios, because this is really about routine, daily, getting the cows to the milking parlor, into the milking parlor. And one of the benefits of doing this evaluation with Wisconsin dairy farmers and employees was we asked them, where do you need help? Where could a tool like this help you where you need more confidence? And actually, we already had a list of things like loading cattle onto a trailer or into a hoof trimming chute. But when we talked to milkers and other people who worked on farms, they said, I get nervous in the maternity pen. I would love more training about handling cows there. And that hadn't even occurred to us. And I think this, again, illustrates the importance of doing these partnerships and talking to our target audiences and hearing what they want.
We do have a speaker online, or a question online. Did you want to respond, Jordan, or?
No. I know dairy. Sorry. I
Okay.
can't speak about anything else.
So we have a question from online that says, reflecting on this project, if you could redo it, would there be anything that you would do differently in the process?
There was a lot of learning along the way. In terms of the process, that I'm not sure. In terms of the content of the game, of course, it's never perfect. We're really proud of what we developed. We think it's useful. There are things that I would tweak and that I'd love to improve. But I think we got really fortunate. We got a lot of funding support. We found a really good partner in Filament Games. Again, the Wisconsin dairy farmers and people who came and provided their input. I think that it all just came together in a way where I feel extremely fortunate.
I'm over here. So I guess kind of to not ask the same question about expanding around animals, but just general, are there other like farm processes or ways that you think you could kind of like expand the games, kind of thinking of like world building or empire, building your empire of like kind of around the farm? Are there other like certificates that you need your employees to take that could be expanded in this way?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Sorry.
I think the question is, what's the next version that you would do for a cool game training beyond animal handling? Is that fair, Nikki?
Potentially, like machinery handling, I'm guessing, is that what you're... It's not the department I deal with on our farm. We have a Tim Strobel, he's our cropping guy. I could see that. I'm not sure what John Deere, let's say, has, or if there's good training programs out there for skid steers and what have you, but I could certainly see that, but sorry, it's just not my department on our dairy.
John Deere actually does have a tractor simulator. So actually, after I got the initial idea for Moving Cows, before we started developing it, I was at a trade show actually in Finland, and there were kids sitting in the tractor seat with screens in front, screens behind, and that kind of told me, okay, the technology is here. We're not totally crazy. But I know that people had asked us about like milking procedure, and I know that there's something maybe related to hoof trimming. One area we'd like to go is with down cow handling, so non-ambulatory cattle, because that's something that's really hard to demonstrate until you're in a crisis, and even filming videos about what to do is really challenging because it's a very sensitive situation. So that would be a next place that we'd like to go. Of course, it's still cattle handling, but instead of basic routine, it's more emergency situations.
All right, for time's sake, I'm going to cut the questions there. If you would help me thank all four of our speakers, Dan and Jordan and Jennifer. You guys were awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.